Yes, they're all here. Okay, good. So, without further ado, now that we have people sitting down here, here's Pete Rollins.
Don't encourage me. So where was I? Yes, this guy dies, right, and he goes to hell. But he's not that bad. He's all right. Guy called Seamus, and he's in a line to get to the administration. And he gets up to the front of the line, and they look at his sheet, and they go through it, all the things he's done. And they go, okay, listen, I'll tell you what, you can choose how you're going to spend eternity. That's the way it goes in Revelation somewhere. And so the person says, Hillary to this big demon, right? Hillary, come here. Go take Seamus and bring him down the hallway. And show him, a couple of options, let him choose something. So Hillary goes over, takes Seamus by the hand, and they walk down in a non-sexual way, and they walk down the corridor, and they come to like a set of doors. And they come to the first door, and they open it, and it smells really bad. There's people here standing in it must be like sewage and stuff, right up to their waists. Oh, it smells awful, really, really bad. So he goes, oh no, that doesn't look good. So then he goes to the next door, and that door opens, and it's even worse. People are standing around and with sewage right up to their shoulders. It stinks absolutely awful. And they go, I don't want to spend eternity like that. That would be terrible. So then he goes to the third room. Now the third room's a bit different. People are standing around and they're just in sewage up to their shins. And on top of that, they're drinking tea, cups of tea, out of fine china cups. And they've got rich tea biscuits. And I don't know if you know what a rich tea biscuit is, because I know in America that kind of your biscuits are different. A rich tea biscuit is what you dip in your tea. And I don't know if you have tea in America. This is British hell, okay? American hell is down the corridor with cappuccinos and cookies, okay? But please use your imagination. This is the UK version. This is UK hell. So he goes like, well, I'll take that. That seems much better. So he walks in, and yeah, he steps into the sewage. It doesn't smell great, but it's fine. And this big demon gives him a cup of tea, pours him it out, gives him a rich tea biscuit, and everything's great. He's just taking his first sip, and a bell goes off, and one of the demons shouts, right lads, tea break's over, back on your heads. Now, the simple thing about that story, of course, is, it just tells us that when something looks too good to be true, it usually is. But that's what I want to look at tonight. I actually want to say, the better it looks, the worse it is. The more someone promises you heaven, the more there is hell to pay. So first of all, you've got to know that we just set this up less than 10 days ago, definitely less than 2 weeks ago, from scratch. So we weren't sure if anybody would show up, so well done. Unless you're not here, yeah, someone's clapping for themselves, good job. And if you're not here in fear and trembling, in case none of you are actually here for me, and you're wondering who the crazy Irish guy is, and you can't make him out, and he's just talking a mile a minute, there is a patio upstairs, so you don't have to listen to me. It's not needed. It's not required. And also go and have drinks. Drink away. I'm honestly better when you drink. I know, really. I've done scientific studies of this, and I get funnier, I get better looking, I get taller. The whole works. So drink, enjoy, and afterwards, for anybody who's interested in these ideas, we can sit around and talk a little bit more about them, because I'm deadly serious about the stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight. So first of all, I want to define what I mean by religion, because that's kind of like a bit of the topic. Religion, I want to take that famous definition of the opiate of the people. Marx in his Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of Right says religion is the opiate of the people. And there was a historian, Patrick O'Farrell, who once said that if religion was an opiate, then the Irish would be addicts, because there's churches everywhere back then. It's kind of like the deep south here, it's everywhere. But, in a sense, actually, I think that religion, it stretches much, much further than that. But let's take the definition, the opiate of the people, a painkiller, religion as a painkiller. The definition goes further. It starts to say, religion is the heart of a heartless nation, the soul of a soulless condition, the imaginary flowers on the chains of our oppression. And then he says, we must get rid of the imaginary flowers, so that we can see the chains. Not so that we despair, but so that we can break the chains and pick living flowers. So that's kind of the wider context. Now, this isn't actually that negative. It sounds quite beautiful. The idea of a type of painkiller, a soul of a soulless nation, heart of a heartless condition. But the problem he had with religion was the way that a painkiller makes things bearable, but it doesn't fix the problem. Whenever you take a painkiller, it makes things temporarily better, but it doesn't actually fix where the pain is coming from. It's like being an alcoholic. You drink alcohol in order to cope with something. Alcoholism is not a problem, it's the solution to a problem. It's what you're doing because something isn't working, because there is some sort of crisis, some sort of trauma, and so the alcohol helps you cope with it. But the problem is, you sober up, and you're in the same condition. And if I can help you get off alcohol through sheer force of will, if we can just, through kind of like positive thinking, etc., can get you off the drink, but we haven't worked out what the drink is a solution to, you'll just find something else. So chain smoking, diet coke, obsessive fitness, obsessive religion, whatever it is, you'll find something to fill in the gap. And in a sense, the idea is religion becomes a dream that doesn't change your reality but helps you stay within it. If you've seen the film Collateral, Collateral is about an assassin who is, what do you call him? Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is driving around LA, I think it's LA, and he's like killing people off, and he's in this taxi, and the taxi driver has to drive him around or he'll be killed. And they kind of start to have this kind of conversation. And what you find out is you find out that the taxi driver wants to create this high-class, high-end limousine service, right? You know, for like really wealthy people, stars, attorneys, all of that. And he even has pictures of the cars in his cab. And in fact, he's even told his mum that he already has the business. Right? He's already told her that it's already going, because there's a point in the film where he goes to see his mum in hospital and the assassin goes in as well. And so the assassin sees him lying to his mum. And afterwards, there's a tension between the two, and the assassin's feeling judged by the taxi driver, and he's getting sick of it, and he says, tell me, how much money have you got saved for this high-class, high-end limousine service? And the guy goes, I don't want to talk about it. He goes, no, come on, how much have you got saved up? He says, no, it's none of your business. And the assassin says, I'll tell you, you've got nothing. He says, you're sitting here in the yellow cab, like dreaming that you'll one day have this business. You're going to wake up in 30 years' time with a beer in your hand, in your easy chair. Nothing will have changed, and you'll just let it all go. He says, you're moralizing about me killing people. You're killing yourself. Right? Now, what you see in that movie is how the dream of this new work is the very thing that's keeping him in his old work. The dream that something could be better is the fantasy that allows him to cope with a reality that he hates. And that's what this definition of religion is trying to get at. Now notice, it doesn't mention theism or atheism or anything like that. It names and it mentions the function. You also see this actually, by the way, in The Sweet By and By, if you know that famous hymn that was written by Webster. Webster famously suffered from depression, and he wrote this hymn in one sitting, and it gave him great consolation when he was depressed. He would sing about in the sweet by and by, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet in the sky, in the sweet by and by. That's definitely not how it goes, by the way. We'll edit that out of the video. We'll stick in the real lyrics. But this song's taken up by the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army would sing this song as the miners were coming back from this long, hard day's work. They were working all the waking hours they could. They were mistreated. They were dying of various illnesses, and on their way home, the miners would hear this song, The Sweet By and By. And one guy, Joe Hill, watched this and he became concerned about it, and he wrote a parody of the song. And the parody goes like this. I'm not just texting somebody, by the way. Excuse me. It's in my phone. It goes like this. Long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will eat, by and by, in that glorious land above the sky, way up high. Work and pray, live on hay, you'll get pie in the sky when you die. And the Starvation Army they play, and they sing and they clap and they pray, till they get all your coin on the drum, then they tell you when you're on your bum. And then for the chorus again. And then the next verse is, holy rollers and jumpers come out, and they holler, they jump and they shout. Give your money to Jesus, they say, we will cure all diseases today. If you fight hard for children and wife, try to get something good in this life. You're a sinner and bad man, they tell. When you die, you will sure go to hell. And then it kind of inspires the miners to rise up and kind of make a real change. And then the last chorus is whenever the miners sing back to the people, you will eat, by and by, when you've learned how to cook and how to fry. Chop some wood, till do you good, will do you good. Then you'll eat in the sweet by and by, that's no lie. Of course they killed him. So the interesting thing about it is for Joe Hill, he saw how this type of thing was helping people feel better about, someday it will be good. A hope was being given, but it was a hope that was not demanding any action in the present reality. And so there are two types of hope, and we all know this. There's the hope that makes you sit back and do nothing, right? And then there's the hope that makes you act. Like if you want your kids to go to university, that's a hope that makes you have to do something about it. Or if you hope that you can change the material circumstances of your family or of your community, that hope is what inspires you to act. It inspires you to put your shoulder to the wheel and do something. So religion in its negative form is the kind of hope that makes you sit back and think, oh, someday it'll be better. And that was what was being critiqued. Now what's interesting to me is religion of that sort is not really found in churches much anymore. Now it is, of course, and maybe down south it is. It's just not believed anymore that much, But the idea that religion is on the decline is crazy. Because anywhere you go, and I live in LA, I think this is the religious capital of the world. LA, it's the place where people are drunk on religion. So the big drug at the moment is ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is kind of like, you go to Peru, you meet some holy man, and you chew on this bark or something, you throw up a few times, and then the doors of perception are opened, and you have oneness with the universe. You break down all the layers, and you encounter the divine in the midst. Honestly, I know these people. I hang around with Burning Man community. They talk like religious priests about this experience. Or if you look at the transhumanists, the new technology gurus, who's promising today that you will never die, that you will live forever, that you will be able to escape your decaying body, that you will be able to fly faster than light, that you will be omniscient? These are the promises of the new technology. Soon you will be able to digitally download your consciousness into the cloud. Soon you will be able to directly encounter all the information that is available. You will be able to be in multiple places and connect directly with other people. You've seen the film, Lucy or Transcendence. These are all based on this kind of philosophy, this kind of approach, which, by the way, may well be true. If death is not completely abolished, then maybe death will be put back thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years. By the way, I think most of us have probably missed the boat. Annoyingly, if you're under like 20, you might be okay. But all of these are promises, and also the New Age spirituality, offering practices. If you do this, you will have peace, you will have harmony, you will have oneness if you stretch yourself in various ways, by the way, which I do a little bit, but not first, but the promise that somehow you will have a transcendental experience. My friend Kester Bruin is just finishing a book at the moment on BBC Radio 4. Oh, somebody's just turned me off. Sorry, God. This is all part of it. You have to work out the symbolism. Okay, get the balloon animals out. I need balloons, quick. It's always my cover. Okay. Is that a battery mic? Oh, did I pick the mic?
Yeah, there we go.
It's his fault. I swear it was his fault. Really embarrassing. Okay, let's just forget that. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, there's this guy dies and goes to hell. Right. From the lock the doors, nobody's getting out until this video's perfect. Wow, look at that. I turned myself up. You know what? Freud would have a field day on that kind of thing. My analyst is about to make a lot more money because that'll be months of analysis. Okay, where was I? You know, this is where I need you to help me get through this. If you don't feed back to me where I am, we're going to be here all night. Kester, very good. You get the hymn book. You get the star in the book. Kester Bruin has just written a book called On Getting High, and it's about the human desire to escape from the earth, to get off the ground. So it starts off as a history of aviation, but then of course it moves on beyond that to our desire to get high, you know, as in to take drugs, to again escape our finitude, to escape our brokenness, to escape our suffering. This is a very natural thing that we all want to do in different ways. It expresses itself in different ways. But loads of people are promising the truth. Take that drug, consume that product, have that money, have that car, go out these places, marry that person, worship in this place. All of this is promising that things can be better, that things can be good. And it's not just the religious world, like the church world, that's doing it. No, the secular world is knee-deep in this sewage. It's knee-deep in the promises of wholeness, happiness, and completion, that you can, through spiritual practices or material actions, somehow escape your lack. The theologian Tillich, an existentialist, talks about how this lack expresses itself in various ways. The first, of course, is death. This is joy, you know, great conversation for a bar. Death, you're going to die. I heard the other week somebody saying to their friend, I was in the coffee shop, and he said, I'm dying, to his friend. His friend freaked out, and he said, I've got 30 years to live. Now, the guy was in the 60s, so he was playing with his friend. His friend was like, phew. But that's true. You know, he's got 30 years left. If you go, the weak form of it is if you go to the doctors because you think there's something wrong with you, and they look and they go, no, you're okay, and you go, whew, I nearly died. That's the weak form. And the strong form is when you leave and you realise, oh, I'm still going to die. You know, that's the strong form, and that's a sense of lack. The second is kind of nihilism, the experience that life lacks meaning. The weak form is whatever you're doing in your life, you go, I don't know if it's meaningful, maybe it would be better if I went and did something else. You know, working in the ice cream factory might not be as good as looking after sick kids or whatever, although I'd like to work in an ice cream factory. But then the strong form is you go, you know what, maybe nothing is meaningful, right? And the third is moral lack, where, you know, you have a sense that you didn't quite live up to some standard, that, you know, you could have been nicer to your mum. And the strong form is when you go, I don't know if I could ever really live up to who I want to be. Another one that I think that you could add to these is doubt. The weak form is where you start to go, I lack a certain knowledge. I pretend that I know loads of things. We all do that. We pretend we're smart and we know what we're doing. We're all like, you know, David Brent in The Office. We're all you know, the office functions, especially the UK office, in an interesting way. You've got David Brent, who makes a fool of himself, right? He's walking around doing stuff, and then he kind of like, he makes an absolute ass of himself, and everybody laughs. But the interesting thing is, that's not where the joke is. The joke is precise. David Brent has to realise he's an idiot, right? So for the punchline, but he's got to refuse to know what he knows. He's got to pretend that he thinks he's not an idiot. That's where the joke is. Because if he just turned around and started crying, I'm an idiot, that wouldn't be funny. Well, for some of you it might, sickos. But for most of us, that wouldn't be funny. It would be like tragic. And also, if he didn't notice that he was dumb, you'd be waiting for the punchline. It's the same as Laurel and Hardy. Hardy gets into an embarrassing situation. He realises he's an idiot, but he refuses to admit it. In the same way, we're in a sitcom. And the sitcom is, you know, the gargoyles on the churches, the grotesques, are laughing at us. Because we walk around thinking we know things, that we've got the answer, that we're right and everybody who disagrees with us is wrong. And that's hilarious. And the reason why it's funny is because we know it, but we pretend we don't know it to ourselves, except for late at night when we go, all right, I probably don't really know all the answers, but most of the time we kind of act as if we do. The only way out of the sitcom is to admit you're an idiot. That's the trick. So David Brent, in the last episode of The Office, at the UK office, the good one, not the American one, only because you guys just bleed things out, you know? It's in like a series 45 or something. In the UK, it's a very short thing. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Maybe it's over here as well. But the end is brilliant in the UK office because David Brent is at a bar like this with a few Z-list celebrities, and he suddenly realises that people aren't laughing with him, they're laughing at him. And he suddenly realises that his life is not brilliant. He's not this Renaissance philosopher who everyone thinks is brilliant and makes all his employees laugh. He realises he's a little bit pathetic. And then he goes out to another bar and he meets a woman there. And he doesn't try to impress her by pretending to be something he's not. He just kind of admits that he's a middle-aged guy in a job that he doesn't really like, and that his life hasn't quite worked out the way he wanted it to. And she kind of likes him. So they go to the office party together, and he chats to the staff, and he kind of hangs out with them, and he has a laugh with them, and then he goes home. It's over. The comedy's over. There's nothing left. It's finished because he's realised he's an idiot, and now he's not really anymore. You know? So anyway, we're in the sitcom. We don't really admit that. Mostly, we kind of like go on as if we know everything. And why was I saying that? Where was I? Read that. You're the guy because you got the hymn book.
Turn your mic off.
Oh yeah. That's right. That's what I do whenever things are not going well. I just turn the mic off. Yes, I was doing Kester Bruin on Transcendence, and then I did Nihilism. Yes, Doubt and Unknowing. Oh yeah. Thank you. Who was that? Yeah, you're good. Hey, whatever I say. Oh, you guys have to look interested because the camera can see you. So stroke the beard. Good. We're getting through this. Nobody's noticed all the issues so far. Yes, what was it? No, doubt. Yes, doubt and unknowing. Now, where we kind of realise maybe we don't have the answers, and the strong form is maybe we just never will. And we try to protect ourselves from these anxieties. Of course we do. We build walls around it. We try and protect ourselves with bigger and bigger houses. And I'll tell you what, I've seen some crazy churches in this last week. I was going through Tulsa. These things are like fortresses. They're like Fort Knox. It's incredible, and I can understand it because the more you kind of build something, and the more money and resources there is, the more you kind of want to protect yourself from the anxiety of unknowing and impurity and all of that. But you know, you're going to want to have your own coffee shop, and you're going to want to have your own bookshop, and you're going to want to have your own restaurant and your own accommodation and your own walled city to protect yourself to push the stuff outside. You know, there's the old story about this guy Seamus who no, he doesn't die. I've done that one. This is before he died. Before he died, he got washed up on a desert island. And on this desert island, he's there for 20 years, on his own. I feel like David Brent. And he's on the desert island, and eventually this plane flies overhead, and they see some fire, and they land, and they go, "My goodness, you here all on your own?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Right, we'll take you back to Ireland, get you a Guinness." Like, brilliant. But he says, "First of all, like, show us where you lived." So he brings them to this clearing, and he shows them this area, and in this area there are 3 buildings. And they go, "What's the first building?" He goes, "Oh, that's my house. I built that, that's where I lived, that's where I work, running water, the works." "Oh, very good." And he said, "What's that second building?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a very religious man." Did I offend you? Oh no, that's okay, it's coming back. Just go to the toilet. And number 1? That's okay, it's embarrassing. Don't be too long. What's that second building? "Oh," he says, "I'm a very religious man." He says, "That's my church. I go there to worship every week. Every Wednesday I do a wee Bible study." "Oh, very nice, very nice." And he's about to walk away. He says, "What's the third building?" He says, "I don't want to talk about it." "No, what's the third building?" "I don't want to talk about it." "Come on, tell me, what's the third building?" He says, "That's a church I used to go to." Terrible place, right? Now, and the point is we want to push the darkness out onto something else. The place we used to go to, that person, that family member, we want to get rid of it. We don't want to embrace it. The lacks, of course, we build big walls and we have everything, but you can't lock that darkness out. It'll always come back. And how does that work? Well, you see things, and why am I against this? Why am I against happiness and wholeness, apart from being like a really sad Irish guy who just wants to see the world in flames colliding with the sun? It makes me feel better when other people are unhappy. No, I'm in LA where people live under the unhappy illusion that they can be happy. It's terrible. You should see it. Everybody's trying to have fun. You go out at night and everybody's having a blast, and about 3 o'clock in the morning everyone's dancing, and you just think to yourself, what would happen if you just turned on the lights and turned the music off for like 3 minutes? I think they'd all be bawling their eyes out. At that time at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're frenetically enjoying yourself, it's just obvious from the way people are standing, the way someone holds their drink or pretends to text on their phone or whatever, that there's this profound game going on to protect themselves from looking at something in their own lives. We all do this. So why am I against this? And I'm against it because I think it always fails. It always falls short. There's an Islamic tale of this woman, and everywhere she went she carried water and fire. Water in one hand and fire in the other. The water was to extinguish hell and the fire was to burn up heaven. Now if I had a budget, I'd have water trickling here and fire here, but I don't have a budget. So let's just imagine that for the rest of the talk, okay? Fire's here and water's here. It would look good. I'm trying to think for the next tour whenever it gets really big. Keep your wallets in your pockets for now. We'll do the money, we'll do the giving later. We call it a silent collection, no coins, right? So water and fire. You see, everybody wants to keep heaven but get rid of hell. In religion, progressives want to get rid of hell, they want to keep heaven. In the secular world, we want the heaven of the highs without the hell of the lows. Everybody wants it. What if heaven and hell are interrelated? What if they're completely intertwined and you can't get rid of one without the other? You see, what I want to say is this. All ideological systems that offer you wholeness, completion, happiness, whatever it is, whether it's a marriage, whether you think marriage will complete you, whether it's your church, whether it's your job, whatever it is, it says the political system you're in, this is going to fix everything. It's going to give you everything you need. The more that system has to repress things. So how does an ideological system work? And this is where we get to the meat of this talk. Is ideological systems tell you 2 things. They tell you what you can do, and they tell you what you can't do. Whether it's a political system or a religious system or a marriage or whatever, there's things that are acceptable and there are things that are unacceptable. But all ideology also functions by telling you the acceptable, unacceptable things. Right? There is a constellation of acceptably unacceptable practices, and that's what allows it to function. So a few examples. In a marriage, if you think marriage is going to be perfect and complete you and make you whole, the fantasy you believe when you're in your 20s, that amazing things, the more you think that, the more when you get into the nitty-gritty of real relationships, right, the more you're going to find out that they're really complex and difficult and all of this. If you keep holding on to that ideal, and so on Facebook it's always pictures of you smiling with your partner and saying how amazing everything is and how great everything is, which is always trying too hard. Anytime I see someone smiling in every picture, I think, oh, how depressed are you? It is the Freudian thing. He's very true. Freud's thing is, if someone says, I had a dream and it definitely wasn't about my mother, it was about your mother. It's the same thing as I'm not a racist, right? You're a racist. I don't mean to offend you. You're going to offend me, okay? All of this stuff. Then the more frenetically you try to show you're happy, obviously the more stuff that's going on beneath the surface. But we try to maintain the equilibrium. So in a marriage, it says you need to be loving, forgiving, gracious. You can't have affairs, right? And the unacceptable is bitterness and anger and fighting and affairs, right? But then in an unhealthy marriage, there's a whole pile of acceptably unacceptable transgressions. You can have an affair, just don't ever talk about it. You can be bitter and angry and hate the other person, but don't bring it up over dinner. Don't ever mention it, right? And so marriages can continue to operate, and everybody knows it. The kids know it, the mother, the father, everybody knows that there's this anger and resentment and bitterness. But strangely, we are all kept together, bound by a lie, pretending that what's happening isn't happening. And that's how the system functions. Here's the thing, people think, well, if we brought the stuff up, the system would come into crisis. No, the system already is in crisis. The crisis is just being disavowed. So somebody asked me recently, tell me some good news about the community that you did, something positive that came out of it. And I started talking about these two people who separated, and someone was saying, that doesn't sound really all that good, right? Okay, I suppose not, but it really was, because this relationship had gone on for about 10 years with all of this stuff underlying. Now, nothing really bad, but just stuff that was destructive, soul destroying, a breathtaking, heart stopping, and yet they continued. But over time they were able to bring that stuff to the surface. Now when you bring it to the surface, one of two things happen. Either you decide to separate, right, we're gonna go our separate ways, or you decide to work it out. But the system cannot continue to maintain itself. I talked to somebody a few days ago who said that every time her parents come around, she hides the alcohol in her house. Everything. All the whiskey, all the wine, all the beer, everything. And so I said, why does your mum not know you drink? It was, oh no, she asked me to do it. Like, what? She asked you to do it? Oh yeah. They're like, so she knows you drink, and she knows you've got alcohol in the house, but you've got to hide it. She said, yeah, because whenever it's out, it causes a big, argument. And what's happening there is everybody knows, but as long as it's not mentioned, that's an acceptable transgression that allows a modicum of civility within the family. If it comes up, it causes a crisis. I also know people who, two other things, who are living together, but when they go and stay at one of the parents' houses, they sleep in separate bedrooms. Grown adults, right? Who the parents know they're in the same house living together. I don't think they think they're using separate bedrooms. But what happens is, it can't be talked about. Everybody knows, but like the emperor's new clothes, nobody mentions it. Or it's people who don't go to church until they come back to their parents' house, and then they dress up in their Sunday best and go. You go like, do your parents not know you don't go to church? Well, I think they do, but we just do it, right? Those families are not potentially going to be in crisis if that comes up. Those families are in crisis. It's a crisis that's not being acknowledged. And if it brings up to the surface, two things are going to happen. Either there's going to be a split in the family, but then you just realise how heartless the whole thing was in the first place. Or the family has to do the difficult work of saying, how do we resolve this? How do we live together? And how do we kind of have a healthier kind of relationship with each other? A good example of this religiously is if you've been following Mars Hill, Seattle, Mars Hill was a community that was offering, like a lot of communities, the answer, the truth. It was moving forward at a very fast rate. It was growing quickly. It felt, I'm sure if you were in it, like you were the chosen people. It's strong. But as any system that offers that amount of certainty and like we have the answer, there has to be a whole set of disavowed practices, transgressions that are acceptable, but they're acceptable in not being said. And what you saw then is those began to come out. They weren't really secrets. Lots of people knew about them. The staff knew that there was staff mistreatment. People knew about mismanagement of funds. This stuff was not a big secret, but it was something that nobody was talking about. But then some people just kept bringing it to the surface, bringing it to the surface, bringing it to the surface. And eventually, the system can't maintain itself because it has to do something. It has to crack, and that's kind of what you've seen. There's an interesting political example. Give me one sec. I'm back. You guys don't have Mitchell and Webb. You should do, because there's like two of the funniest people in the world ever. Oh, does somebody knows Mitchell and Webb? Very good, thank you.
Are we the baddies?
What's that?
Are we the baddies?
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah. Sorry, we're just going to have a little conversation here, just because, don't mind us. Yeah. So, what's your favourite Mitchell? Okay. So in Mitchell and Webb, one of their skits is they've got like a guy who's like Dr. Evil. He's dressed up like a James Bond villain, bald, grey suit, he's stroking a cat and, all of that. And then, he has henchmen dressed in black with like polo necks on and whatnot. And just in this particular one, Dr. Evil is in his office and doing a crossword or something, Sudoku. And the two henchmen come in. And the first henchman says to him, "I'm afraid, sir, we still have a problem with Detective Harrison." "Yes, Detective Harrison has an irritating talent for disrupting my arrangements. Would you like me to have him removed?" "Yes, perhaps it would be better if Detective Harrison were taken out of the picture." "Sorry guys, you're doing it again." "What, Alan? Have him removed, taken out of the picture? I thought we agreed at the meeting that these terms are needlessly ambiguous. We all agreed that from now on, when we want someone murdered, i.e. deliberately killed to death, then that's what we're going to say. Look, everyone knows what we mean. Well, on this occasion perhaps. That was an order to murder Detective Harrison, wasn't it, right?" "Well, he has become a nuisance." "Right. But a nuisance we should murder. Is that it? My nephew's a nuisance. But you see what I'm saying?" "Yes, all right. Well, can you say it, please?" "Okay. Please deal with the Harrison situation." You see, that's no good. "Oh, that was perfectly clear. What are you talking about, Keith? This is going to be, let's hope Professor Ritson meets with a little accident all over again. We waited 6 months for Professor Ritson to meet with a little accident until Leslie here tells us it's an accident that we were supposed to make happen," right? And then at the very end, as the henchman's going out, Dr. Evil says, "Perhaps later you might join me for a little light refreshment." And the henchman says, "Do you mean anal sex?" But this is an example of how in political systems that cannot name their darkness, right? The more you have a city on the hill, the more you have a political system that says we are pure, we are good, we are right, we are moral, the more they cannot say what's going on beneath the surface. Black hole prisons, torture of innocence, waterboarding, whatever it is. And then you have to use terms look at the term enhanced interrogation. It's the perfect example of not naming something, right? The philosopher Slavoj Žižek said, imagine how obscene it would be if you said that rape was an enhanced sexual approach, right? Obscene. But yet, enhanced interrogation is a code word for torture because you cannot say it. Systems require and try to show that they are perfect, that they are good, that they are wonderful, whatever, they cannot speak their darkness, because when it comes up, it ruptures things. I think actually, you can see this in what's happening in Ferguson, is that what's happening is what's being brought to the surface is what everybody knows was happening, but nobody named. And there's two types of protest, and this is important. There's a type of protest in which the authority allows you to do it, right? So you say, I'm going to do a protest, and you fill out the forms, and then you get the forms back, and says you can be there at 2:30 at the park, and stay there to 4:30, and pick up your rubbish, and everything will be great. That is a protest that is endorsed by the very system that you're attempting to attack. That is the equivalent of the Joker in the medieval court, who could attack the king, could attack royalty, but was employed by the king, was employed by royalty. And so the Joker had this really, like, it was a fine line. If they said too much, they could get killed. And if they didn't do enough, they could get killed, because there had to be a gas release valve in order to do it. It's almost like in churches, whenever they kind of try and think of, like, come on, let's think of a radically cool new way to get the kids in. You know, whatever. Let's use candles. That's brilliant. Candles, brilliant. You know, rocks. I think rocks would do. Let's have rocks around and candles, and we'll put rocks in our pockets, and we'll put rocks in our mouths, and we'll light tea lights. Tea lights. That's the answer. That's the answer. What new instrument can we get you? Tattoos. We need tattoos. You know, that's the kids love tattoos. So I think if like you were just like a cool kid, you'd be so pissed off because the evangelicals always just take the cool stuff and make it uncool. You always have to keep pushing it further and further. Everyone's going to take it all. And the more radical they look, the youth workers, the less radical they are. You know that? It's like, you know, this crazy punk, purple hair and ripped trousers, half naked, tattoos everywhere, and talking about rapping with his best friend Jesus. I'm in love with a man. His name's Jesus. So this is protest that happens within the system, and people are going, oh, look at those crazy kids, you know, they want to use tea lights, this is crazy, and all of that. In contrast, a real protest is a protest that is not endorsed by the system it attacks. It actually ruptures the system. Strangely, like the trickster doesn't hate the system. The trickster actually does it out of a love for what the system can be. There's this love that causes the betrayal. An example of this is in Australia. I was just in Australia 2 weeks ago, and they're doing a thing called Love Makes a Way. Because kids are being imprisoned, kids of immigrants, who are being processed, you know, to see if they can get into the country, and these kids are being languishing in prison. So these religious leaders are getting arrested. They're going into political offices, right? And they're saying, very respectfully, they're going like, we think this is an abomination, we think this is terrible, and we will stay here until something is done. And then they sit down, they pray. And it's funny because the police don't really know what to do. You know, it's easy to beat up a pile of anarchists, you know, when no one's looking. But it's hard to beat up a guy in a clerical collar. It was like a friend of mine, by the way, was an activist, an eco-warrior around Europe, and they dressed as clowns. And he said he dressed as clowns because the police find it harder to beat up a clown. And it looks really bad if it gets on the news. That was one of their trainees. They're like, why did you dress as a clown? Oh well, you know, they feel awkward, they feel icky about it. You know. It is funny, but he has some crazy stories. He said one time they chained themselves to this railing at the Parliament, like chained themselves up so they couldn't be removed. And then the police just came up with stun guns and said, if you don't unchain yourself, we're going to start poking you. Like, okay, quickly, you know. So it was pretty violent. But anyway, where was I? Australia. Yeah. So what happened is then they got arrested. They got put in handcuffs, they got brought to the police station, and then they got charged, they got put up in front of court. Now, what happens now? Well, it's embarrassing because national news comes out and they start to cover it. Everybody knows this is going on, right? No, everyone knows, but everyone wants to pretend they don't know that they know, right? We want plausible deniability. It's like what Shizek said about WikiLeaks, you know, it's like WikiLeaks wasn't radical because we found stuff out that we didn't know. We all knew that, but we didn't know about what one politician said to another, but that stuff was for the tabloids. That was boring. The stuff that they said about the torture, the killings, we all knew that. We just didn't want to know that we knew it. We wanted plausible deniability. So that's the thing, when we're confronted with our own darkness, we're freaked out. That's why Oscar Wilde said, if you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh, otherwise they will kill you. That's why you have to learn stories and parables and jokes and crazy stuff, and have an exit. So, I'm getting there. Yes, so they were arrested. The judge said to them, you're exonerated. In fact, I commend you for your acts. I commend you for standing up for something like this. So the state is humiliated. Policies begin to change, right? But not enough. So they do it a second time. What happens the second time? Well, of course, power always adjusts to resistance. So this time they arrest them, but they know not to charge them. So as soon as they're outside and are far away from the building, they let them go. That's how power and resistance work. Power will always seek to take protest and resistance and make it fit in with the system. So now that group has to think of new ways to cause a type of resistance, to set off, because to create a disturbance, because systems require and desire equilibrium. That's what they do. But the radical move then, for all of us, is how do we bring up the unspoken in our family lives, in our marriages, in our communities, in our politics? How can we be, and it's not about thinking about what the alternative is. Everybody will say to you, what's the alternative? Oh, you're trying to blow up the church. What's your alternative? You're trying to blow up this. What's your alternative? But in a sense, you cannot think of an alternative, because we are so immersed in the way things are that if we think of an alternative, it will just be a reshuffling of the chairs. You will end up recreating the same, which just looks a little bit different, right? What's interesting is, if you just bring up the repressed, the system will start to shake, and two things will happen generally. One is, well, you'll either get killed or something, or if not that, the system will begin to reform, and or something else will grow out of it. If you look at Luther never wanted to create the Protestant church. He was just trying to bring up the disavowed stuff that was existing at the time in the religion, indulgences, money for wars, all of that. That idea didn't have a clear idea of a new form of church. That just was an epiphenomenon. That was a secondary result of just bringing up the stuff, which also ended up reforming the Catholic Church. You can see Christ in the same way, as simply bringing up, and any prophets, bringing up the disavowed darkness in a system that causes the system to collapse and reform and create new things. The radical move is, how do we discover what the unspoken is? And it's like if there's someone who could walk in that door right now, right, and your heart would stop. Someone, I don't know who it is, alive or dead, living in this town or living far away. If they walked in, you would go, right? Now that person is somebody you're probably not thinking about on a day-to-day basis. Probably doesn't come into your mind much at all. But they will have an effect on you when they walk in, and they won't have an effect on me. Because that's not my absence, that's not my unspoken, that's your unspoken. My unspoken's different. My unspoken's there, but it's different from yours. That's why the old Russian joke, I love Russian jokes because they're not funny, but they tell you the meaning of life, right? But in 2 lines, in communist Russia, we're going up to fishmongers and this kind of butchers, and eventually this guy gets into the fishmongers and says, I don't suppose you have any fish? And the fishmonger says, no, he says, we don't have, I don't suppose you have any beef? And he says, no, we're the fishmongers. We don't have any fish. If you do want beef, you've got to go next door. In other words, it's like in Northern Ireland, if there was a Catholic neighbour in a Protestant area, nobody would talk about it. Now, they also didn't talk about Hindus. But they didn't talk about Hindus because there weren't any Hindus around. So the not talking about the Catholic was different from not talking about the Hindus. That was their unspoken. And what's radical in one community is not in another. If you know there's a musician called Michael Gungor, and he's causing a lot of kind of like disturbance within a certain conservative space. that wouldn't cause any disturbance in another space. It's causing a disturbance there. And by the way, it's not a disturbance of like a bit of disagreement. If you disagree with me, most people disagree. I don't think anybody in this room probably agrees with me. I mean, I'm used to that. My friends don't agree with me. I don't agree with me. It's fine. But that's okay. We're all cool with that. But I find if someone really disagrees with me, like really hates me, really wants to punch my lamps out, right? Which I can understand. But it's not that they disagree with me. It's that there's something in them that's responding to what I'm saying that they haven't been able to bring to the surface. And I find this time and again when I talk to the people who actually attack me, and I get to know them. Like one guy in this bar in Canada stands up, starts swearing at me. I call bullshit and all of this. They're swearing at me. And at the end I go up, buy him a drink, we chat, and he says, I'm really sorry. He says, I'm just a Christian talk show host and I was having all these doubts and I'm actually where you are. I don't know why I reacted. But it's projection. You project out what you can't bring to the surface, what you can't bring out. And that's what I find time and time again. And what you saw with Gungor is this vehement, violent reaction, which I think shows that actually he's put his finger on a crisis, on unspoken, that's in that community that needs to be brought to the surface. Now, if you're doing this in a community, you've got to do a few things. One is you've got to make an exit plan, because you probably won't get away with it for long, so start training for something else. If you get 3 years, you're pretty good. And two, you've got to learn how to do it subtly, using art and poetry and music and storytelling, and find ways to subtly do indirect communication, because you don't directly attack someone and bring up what they do want to bring up. That's awful. I mean, if I see you having an argument with your mum and I say, you're being an ass, look how you're treating your mum, you'd be like, she's mustard, you don't know what she's like to live with, she's a nightmare. But if I bring you out for a coffee and we sit down and talk, and then I go, you look a bit stressed, what's going on? You'll go, I know, things aren't great, and I really took it out on my mum, I feel a bit bad, right? The indirect communication gets around the defense mechanisms and allows you to actually look at things yourself. Now, we were talking earlier, and I was saying about how the old woman in the church who is really angry about them changing the carpets, she will not let those carpets be changed. She will die over it. That annoying old woman who's just like some ridiculous old woman at the back who's just obsessed with no change here, no carpet change here. It's not about the carpet. It's because she hasn't got over the death of her husband, or the loss of her child, or something. And that's why it is. It's not about the carpet. If I see you argue with somebody, your partner, and you're arguing about, I don't know, turning the lights out before you go to bed. If it's a small argument, that's fine. That's what it's about. It's about turning the lights out before you go to bed. But if it's a raging argument about turning the lights off before you go to bed, it's not about turning the lights off before you go to bed. It's about something else. And so you've always got to be careful not to take seriously sometimes what the vicious argument is, but to ask the question, what's been going on in your life? Tell me about your past. Tell me about your husband. Tell me about your wife. Tell me about your kids. And kind of bring that to the surface, and you realise it's not about the carpet at all. So all of this, only 2 more hours. You're okay? Yeah. The doors are locked. So that's my first point. Usually pastors go for 3-point sermons, but I like to mix it up. We're going for 6. Okay? So all of this to say is we all are haunted houses. We're all full of ghosts. The people that we've loved and lost, people we've hurt, people who've hurt us. And we're all in communities that are haunted. Communities that have ghosts and questions that they can't ask, and things that are a struggle. Maybe it's doubt and unknowing. You see that in churches where the acceptable is belief, believe in X, Y, and Z. The unacceptable is questioning, doubting, intellectual incredulity. But the acceptable, unacceptable is you can have all of that, just don't ever mention it. I know a pastor who said to me, I have these doubts about so many things, but if I brought them up to the eldership, they'd kick me out. And so I said to him, well, do you think the others in the leadership team have the same doubts? And he was like, yeah, I guess so. I mean, they're smart, they've been around for a while, I'm guessing they do. So I'm like, oh, so the unacceptable is not having the doubts, the unacceptable is sharing them. We have to find out where the ghosts are, where the unspoken are, and be courageous enough to bring them to the surface. So if it's in your relationship, you have to be courageous to somehow bring that stuff up. If it's in your family, the same. If it's in your churches or your other communities, it's the same, because that is where the health is. Because hell festers when we just have the heavenly, everything is great, everything is fine, everything is pushing on, and you will wake up 20 years down the line, 20 years later than right here, right now, and you won't have done anything. You'll have a beer in your hand and you'll be on your easy chair, and you'll just have missed the chance to change the job, change the relationship, fix the job, fix the relationship, change or fix that church community. But the good news is, if you don't do it, it will still happen. Bullshit. If you don't do it, it won't happen. There's an old story from Belfast which I love, and it was about during the Troubles. We had a few troubles, and it was the IRA, terrorist organisation at the time. They had this technique where they would plant an incendiary device in a building, and then they would go off and they would phone up the police, and they'd say, right, there's a bomb in Marks and Spencer's, you got 5 minutes to get out, or 10 minutes to get out, or whatever. So this is one of the techniques they were doing. So anyway, one of these guys dies, goes to heaven, he's sitting at the pearly gates, and he's waiting, and St. Peter eventually comes to the gates, and he's got the book of life with him. He flicks open the book of life, and he says, listen mate, he says, you're not getting in here, he's like, you're a terrorist, your name's not in the book, you're going to go downstairs. And this guy's Seamus, he says, hold on a second mate, he says, I think you misunderstand, I'm not trying to get in, you've got 5 minutes to get out, right? That is the message of radical theology. Radical theology is not that we want to get into the heavenly realm, but we want to blow that up and get the absolute into the earth, the absolute here in the midst, amidst the difficulties, the brokenness and the darkness, bringing up what we do want to bring up. And we'll finish with this, and then we can get a drink, and anybody who wants to chat about this stuff can chat. It's a story about a woman who gives birth to a beautiful baby girl, and the little girl dies after only a few days of life. And this woman is distraught, devastated. And she wraps the child's body in linen, and she wraps that body to her own. And she goes in search of someone, of anyone who could resuscitate her child. She goes to the faith healers, and she goes to the witch doctors, she goes to the elders, and nobody can help. But some of the elders say, well, it's said that high up in the mountains, away from the villages, there's a holy man who is so close to the divine, he can even raise the dead. Perhaps it's a myth. Perhaps it's some sort of lie, or he's long since dead. But if you're that desperate, go in search of him. And so she does. She packs a few provisions and she goes up into the mountains. And after 3 days, she comes across a little wooden hut beside a beautiful crystal clear lake. And she knocks on the door of the hut, and she waits, and an old wizened man comes out. And she begins to weep. She says, my child is dead. My child is dead. I don't know if you're the one they speak of, but I must have her back. Well, the old man takes pity on her. He says to her, yeah, I'm the one they're talking about, and I can't help. But in order to help, I need ingredients to make a potion. And one of those ingredients is a handful of mustard seeds taken from a home that has not been touched by the black sun of suffering that has seared your life. And so the woman goes back into the villages, and she goes from house to house to try to get these mustard seeds. But she cannot find any home that has not been touched by death and suffering and by darkness. She can't find anyone who doesn't have a story, who doesn't know what it is to suffer, to experience lack. And yet, as she hears of other people's suffering, she gradually comes to terms with her own, until she is finally able to bury her child in the earth.